Hello, today is October 1, 2025. This time last year, I was out celebrating Jimmy Carter's birthday at the Fox Theater. And this month, I am walking 3 miles a day and thinking about Jimmy Carter and the positive way in which he lived his life and chose to be dedicated in the service and as a servant leader to humanity around the globe. He saw his neighbors to be not just in Plains, Georgia, or even just in Georgia, or just even in the United States, but all over the world. And so we have the honor and privilege of having mentors like that who show us how to be of service and to have care and love even during trying times. So during COVID, this book that was written by Elie Wiesel was one I thought about the most and missed the most. It kept coming to mind primarily because it's so profoundly meaningful in a way that describes people who lived through the Holocaust. And Elie Wiesel was one of those people before coming to the United States. Elie Wiesel is an Andrew Mellon professor in the humanities at Boston University and the author of more than 30 books, including The Town Beyond the Wall, The Oath, and A Beggar in Jerusalem. He received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1986. I love this book. And if you listen to it each night, I read the first chapter last night, and now I'm reading the second chapter. If you listen along with me, I'm sure it'll kind of be like a meditation for you. And you don't have to understand everything. You might be curious and have to listen to some things again. For instance, in the first chapter, he talks about being in a cave. He's waiting on his father to come back. And he ends up being alarmed by a stranger that approaches. And he's afraid, but he's also trying not to be afraid. He's a 19-year-old boy, Jewish boy. And his father does not come back. And he keeps referencing the clouds. And of course, as you go through the listening of this text, you come to understand that the clouds are the ashes of the people who've been murdered. So he's, of course, in hiding. And there are lots of horrific kinds of things that Elie Wiesel talks about in this book, of course. But the point is not to center yourself or turn away, but to pay attention to something about the human dignity in any kind of experience. It didn't need to happen to you, or doesn't have to happen to you in order for it to matter to you. And while this is about, the Holocaust in a specific time and about Nazis, and while we're tossed and turned about by all kinds of propaganda and rhetoric that wants to divide us and point us away from seeing the humanity in each other, this is a good book to listen to and to just let be a part of your consciousness or even your semi-consciousness. So chapter 2 is about more of this conversation, and there are a couple of stories in here. In the beginning of this book, there's a story about 3 different rabbis going, and each one forgets to say, or a certain part of lighting a fire and saying a prayer, and knowing the place in the forest to go. And then at the end, the word is God made man because he loves stories. Okay, so if you haven't listened to the first chapter, go back and listen to the yesterday's reading. And here is chapter 2. It's only like 6 pages. Dawn was about to break in a transparent gray. Although he was shivering with cold, Gregor did not dare to get up and fetch a blanket. He was afraid of being knocked down by the wind. He waited. Something was going to happen. He could feel it. The events of the night were just the prelude to some new development whose sequel was lost in the clouds. The silence became crushingly heavy. Gregor cleared his throat and said, as casually as possible, "Listen, I have an idea. I don't need my name anymore. I'm giving it to you. It's yours. Take it. Gabrielle." The stranger did not find it necessary to thank him, and Gregor was pleased with that. "You like to give, don't you?" Yes, Yes, Gregor admitted. "It is easier." "Not at all. Nothing is more difficult." And he added, as if speaking to himself, "Among Orientals, giving is a privilege which has to be earned." By now it was already light outside, and the horizon was preparing to welcome the sun, which was late in rising. The mountain and the forest breathed easily, as if a weight had been lifted from them. Gabriel began to talk in a voice edged with warmth and melancholy. Gregor, to listen, closed his eyes. "A dying man takes his soul with him, but leaves his name to the survivors. The Germans don't know to what extent they are branded by their stupidity. They kill off Jews, but they can't find a way of erasing their names. The Talmud teaches us that deliverance will come because Israel has not changed her name. It is not by chance that God is known as the everlasting. Every name has something immortal and eternal about it, which defies time. Day follows night, and night follows day. Men are born and die, but the most fragile things, for what is frailer than a name, endures. As I walk through this world, I find empty cities, empty of Jews, of Jewish tears and hopes and prayers, inhabited by names only, and every orphan name begs me to adopt it. I'm lucky, Gregor said to himself. His name was that of his father's father, who had died in the First World War. Jewish tradition requires that a dead man's name be perpetuated so that the chain may be unbroken. I'm not dead, but I've given someone my name. One is never as lucky as in wartime. I've just come from the town at the foot of this mountain, Gabriel was saying. It's crowded with ghosts, and I certainly know ghosts well. There's no ghetto anymore. There was one, I remember, because I know ghettos well, too. Everywhere there are names without bodies, nowhere Jews. The last shipment left a week ago. Big posters in German and Hungarian, I know German too, are stuck up on the walls announcing the good news that since April 25th, by the grace of God, the town is at last Jude-ridden, rid of the Jewish poison, of the Jewish plague, of the Jewish vermin. From now on, in an atmosphere as hygienic as that of a hospital, the people can live in brotherly love and happiness, enjoy together the fruits of victory. At least that's what the posters say. It's enough to kill one Jew for things to improve, as if you could eliminate hatred by eliminating the object of hatred. But the good people of the town are fooling themselves. They forgot to deport the names of their Jewish neighbors whose homes and furniture and bedclothes they have inherited. The names are still hovering like memories overhead, and they will return to haunt their dreams and add blood to their wine. One day, I promise you, these peaceful citizens, these model husbands and fathers, these Christian believers in Christian charity, which is different from charity as such, will be afraid to go to sleep at night. Or rather to wake up in the morning, Gregor put in timidly. He would have liked to interrupt him. He was afraid of what would follow. Gabriel's incantation, soothing to the ear, was still terrifying, for it prepared what was to come, and Gregor did not know whether he could endure it without tears. Afraid to wake up, did you say? No. The names wait for sleep before going to work. That's their private domain. They invade the brain, the blood, desire. Impossible to get rid of them. Finally, he calls for death, because death has no name. Gregor felt himself growing pale. He listened and didn't listen. He was there and far away. A great weight bore down upon him. At the same time, he seemed to be floating in the air. There was a choking sensation in his throat. His heart pounded. Now he understood the message. His father was not coming back. No one was coming back. His family has gone, leaving no trace, gone with no hope of return. Gabriel talked on. What he said came from another time, another world. His voice was never the same. Its accent did not change, but its essence was constantly changing. Just as Gabriel had a 1,000 names, he had 1,000 voices. One contained the plenitude of transparent dawn, another the insensate hope of a man condemned to die, another the fearful silences of a child abandoned in the middle of a crowded street. Gabriel could not be sure whether or not Gregor was listening. He made no sound, nor did he move, and his breathing was almost inaudible. Was it Gabriel's intention to teach a lesson, inflict a punishment, convey a recollection, a sorrow, transmit a message, make some dangerous and terrible confession, describe a long march leading nowhere? It was impossible for Gregor to know. Gabriel spoke in a light, almost detached tone of voice. He told a grotesque, farcical story, a legend to be listened to, a glass in hand with a light heart. He laughed at it with neither joy nor cruelty, with the laugh of a man who has known total fear and is no longer afraid of anyone or anything. And then here's this story. A famous medieval Kabbalist, Joseph de la Reina, made up his mind to put an end to the comedy which man is condemned to play against himself and to bring about the advent of the Messiah. At the cost of considerable sacrifice, the great sage overcame Satan and threw him into chains. Everywhere, in heaven, upon earth, in paradise, and in hell, there was a great commotion. The end was at hand. But the sage made one mistake. He took pity on his captive and succumbed to his tears. Pity is a double-edged weapon, and Satan knows how to use it. He broke his chains, and the Messiah, already on the threshold, was forced to return to his prison, somewhere infinitely far away in the chaos of time and a man's hope. Everything had to start all over because the poor miracle maker had a heart which wasn't hard enough. Gabriel roared with laughter. Gregor surrendered to the anguish which he had felt ever since the first words of the story. He had heard it before, but he couldn't understand why Gabriel had chosen to retell it and to laugh in the retelling. What was so funny about the idea of justice giving birth to its own defeat? Gregor did not dare to question him further or to penetrate this closed world in which things and events must have a secret meaning, a secret bond, impossible to understand, a warped meaning, a warped bond. Gabriel was still laughing, and in order to stop him, Gregor said that he liked the story. "You like it?" said Gabriel angrily. "Is that all you have to say, that you like it?" "It's a beautiful story," Gregor replied. "Sad and beautiful. I like it." "And what about the end? What do you say to that?" "I like that too." He took a deep breath and added, "I wouldn't have the coming of the Messiah depend upon our lack of generosity and pity, even towards Satan. I don't want salvation to come through fire, through cruelty, and through the sacrifices of others." The cave was filled with an obsessive sadness, like that which follows upon the departure of an unhappy friend who cannot find consolation. "I have hurt and disappointed him," Gregor said to himself, and he thought of his parents and grandfather, particularly his grandfather, who was the embodiment of longing for the Messiah. His mother had told him that when his grandfather was a very young man, he had used his first money to buy a beautiful, expensive suit, which he never wore. "I'm saving it," he said, with a strange look in his eyes. "I'm saving it for the day when I shake his hand." He raved when he spoke of the Messiah, but he was not a madman. Gabriel pulled him out of his reverie. "What are you thinking about, my grandfather? Why him? Because he's dead?" "Are you quite sure?" "Yes." "And what about the other members of your family? Don't you ever think of them?" "Very seldom." "Because they're alive?" "Exactly." "Are you sure they're still alive?" Gregor hesitated before replying. "Yes." "No." His heart pounded dully, as on the night when his mother was deathly ill, and he had wept and prayed for hours on end until finally he fell asleep out of sheer exhaustion. When he awakened, he ran to the sick bed, his heart filled with fear. "Mother is dead, Mother is dead, and it's my fault. I should never have stopped praying." His mother opened her eyes and smiled wanly. He buried his face in his hands and backed slowly out of the room. On the days that followed, he came repeatedly to see his mother smile. Then his heart was finally calmed. Gabriel's voice became gentle and melancholy. "When I came last night to this town, I had no idea that I would meet you. If our paths have crossed, it must be that our meeting conceals some meaning. Let's discover it and study it. If we find nothing and our meeting seems to have no significance, then we must impose one upon it. Don't you agree? Yes, sighed Gregor. Then tell me, do you value your life? Yes, I think I do. You only think so? You're not sure? I'm not sure of anything. Gabriel's voice became harsh. I want you to value your life. I demand that to win this war, I want you strong and victorious. Without waiting for an answer, Gabriel changed the subject and started to tell him of the roundabout ways in which death had spared him. Contrary to the common idea, death has a sense of humor. It kills for pleasure, to amuse itself, to laugh. Sometimes Gabriel was so choked with laughter that he had to interrupt himself. His laughter echoed through the cave and mingled with the early morning wind as it blew toward the forest and the mountain, toward all forests and all mountains, as if to shake and uproot them. Gregor told him that he ought to laugh too, if only out of politeness. But to echo Gabriel would have seemed sacrilegious to him. Madmen won't stand for imitation. To them, the outside world is not a mirror or a sound box. They believe themselves alone in the world, as though they were holding that world in the hollow of their hand, and they are right. They live vertically. To drown, one drop of water is enough. Are you listening? Gabriel asked. Yes, I'm listening. You won't forget? No, I won't forget. You won't forget the calls to prayer and the prayers of my companions when they were face to face with their impressive executioner? I won't forget. They looked him straight in the eye, without flinching. They might have thrown themselves at his feet and tried to win his pity. That is what others would have done. But they, not they. Pride that came down to them from an earlier age prevented them from bowing down even before God, who was there behind the executioner. I know, Gabriel, I know. And the fragile, heart-rending silence of the children at the hour of their death. You'll remember that? I'll make it mine. And that Tzaddik who sang as he walked to the ditch where the corpses of his townsmen were piled up, will you remember him? I'll remember him always. His song will be my guide. I'll follow it and shall never let it die. Gabriel's feverish voice was silent. He panted like a man choking to death, then managed to catch his breath and go on. You mustn't forget laughter either. Do you know what laughter is? I'll tell you. It's God's mistake. When God made man in order to bend him to his wishes, he carelessly gave him the gift of laughter. Little did he know that later that earthworm would use it as a weapon of vengeance. When he found out there was nothing he could do, it was too late to take it back. And yet he tried his best. He drove man out of paradise, invented an infinite variety of sins and punishments, and made him conscious of his own nothingness, all in order to prevent him from laughing. But, as I say, it was too late. God made a mistake before man made his. What they have in common is that they are both irreparable. And as if to illustrate his words, he laughed with such passion that Gregor, in order not to scream, refused to hear. Is the end of chapter 2. All right, good night. Come back tomorrow.